I've ranked every card in Marvel Snap. This video is primarily for newer players and for players with a lower collection level, and it's going to help you to know which cards you should claim when you get offered them in the shop, which cards you should get excited about when you unlock them, and which cards you should spend your tokens on. I've ranked all of the cards and I've rated them on a star rating system, with 1 being the worst and 5 being the best, but actually we've got a rating even higher than that, 6 stars. The creme de la creme, the very best cards in the game. This is the same way that I rate food on my food review channel.
Nice!
You can download a high resolution version of the tier list in the description. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments and I'll pin the most interesting discussion points. A little bit about me: I've been playing Marvel Snap for nearly 2 years and I'm a general trading card game enthusiast, analyst and super fan. So I'm going to go through the best cards, the worst cards. We're going to talk a little bit about each of them, say what makes them good or what makes them bad. You can use the chapters below to skip to a specific section, and I plan on re-evaluating this list every 6 months or so. So I'll be uploading a new video every 6 months. Please subscribe, and we're going to start with the worst cards. The good news is, I don't actually think there are that many cards in Marvel Snap that are really bad. Second Dinner, the developers, do a really good job of staying on top of cards and doing regular balance changes to make sure that cards that are slipping behind are improved. That being said, I do think there are 4 cards which are the worst cards in the game, and one of them is Namor. Namor is a 4/6 with the ongoing ability plus 5 power if he's the only card at that location. The problem with Namor is 11 power at a single location is just generally not enough. The other very awkward thing with Namor is that you can't really leave a location blank with the anticipation that you're going to either surprise play Namor in there on the final turn, because as I said, 11 power isn't enough. Also, if you do that on the final turn, it only leaves you with 2 energy to spend elsewhere, which isn't probably enough to sort of bolster any other location and doesn't leave you in a great position to have a big impact on the rest of the game state or on the rest of the board. On top of all of that, 11 power is within the range of Shang-Chi, so your opponent can Shang-Chi it and completely win the location anyway. So if you were to play Namor down early, that doesn't even work. That being said, there's a lot of clog cards like Green Goblin and White Widow out there these days, so that isn't even good for Namor. So Namor is just a trash fire bad. Another very weak card is Kang. He resets the turn, and that's basically, it's just not good. The one thing that I like about Kang is that you can Kang snap. So you can pretend that you're in a favourable position, or bluff that you're in a favourable position, snap, and try and force a retreat out of your opponent. The thing is, if you're making your opponent retreat, that's not even really what you want. You want to take your opponent for 8 cubes, or have a good turn. And Kang, taking up one of those valuable 12 slots in your deck, he just comes out very lukewarm. Another lukewarm card is Adam Warlock. He's a 5/5 ongoing card, which at the end of the turn, if you're winning that location, he draws you a card. The problem is, he costs 5, so you can only get him out late. In what deck are you so desperately wanting to draw cards that you can sacrifice your entire turn 5 to spend that much energy to simply draw a card? You may be drawing a combo piece that you desperately needed, but he's 5 energy, so you're just so much better off spending that energy in another way of trying to win the game. So Adam Warlock, unfortunately, is a card that still isn't working. And one of my absolute least favourite cards, which breaks my heart, is Mantis. She's a 1/2, and if you guess where your opponent played their card that turn, you get a copy of the card they played. This card just doesn't work out. You'll see as well in the 1.5 star category, and I think we've got a few, I think we've got maybe one in the 2-star category as well. We've got some of the other Guardians of the Galaxy. Oh my god, my light has gone off. We've got some of the other members of the Guardians of the Galaxy like Drax and Groot, and the problem is, trying to guess where your opponent is going to play is a very hard thing to do. Even if you build your deck around that ability, like cards like Nebula, which can definitely give you a decent idea of where your opponent is going to play. But even with those cards, the payoff is too weak. With the other Guardians of the Galaxy, you get extra power. With Mantis, you get a copy of the card they played. You don't get any other benefit or bonus to the card they played. So it doesn't cost less. It doesn't have more power. So it's so rarely beneficial to you to do so. There will be very minor situations where that is beneficial, like you manage to guess the location where they're going to play their Venom and you get a massive Venom. But it still just isn't enough. And even when you get that Venom, you might be accidentally destroying your own cards anyway, and that could be feeding their Null or their Death. So there's this weird mismatch between what they're trying to do and what you're trying to do. Mantis just doesn't work. And as I said, this list is completely subjective. However, naturally and obviously, what my opinion is on the weakness of some of this cards aligns with most of the players, because these are some of the least played cards in the game. Let's move up to a few of the cards who aren't quite as bad but are still extremely weak. We've already spoken about Drax and the rest of the Guardians of the Galaxy. It's too big of a risk trying to guess where your opponent is going to play, and the reward of getting a little bit of extra power is just not great enough of a reward. It means it discounts and discredits all of the Guardians of the Galaxy, really, and none of them are particularly good. But another card that is pretty weak, disappointingly weak, is Master Mold. Master Mold adds 2 Sentinels to your opponent's hand, so it's all about filling up your opponent's hand. The problem is that particular archetype with Ronan the Accuser and Black Widow and that type of thing is just fairly weak. I mean, in the case of Master Mold, they themselves are a 2/2, so it's not a strong card. It's not a strong card to actually have on the board, and you're sort of also giving them resources. So if they didn't have resources, they're actually able to then play those cards out and sort of sideways benefit from it anyway. So it's a card that just doesn't feel good, and it doesn't have enough support. Maybe one day it will do, but that time is not now. So, through the next several ranks, we're not really going to look at any of the cards in detail, guys. So we've got 2-star. Some of the callouts from 2-star is Giganto. It's a very high power card, but limited in where you can play it. You've got cards like Colossus, who just simply don't do much. And you've got cards that might work in their own individual archetypes or very specific decks, like Silver Samurai. So all of these cards, as you'll see, they basically just aren't that strong on their own, or they're very, very specific, and even then not particularly powerful. Moving up through the 2.5-star cards and the 3-star cards, and we start seeing cards that you're actually generally happy to play. 3-star cards are fine. In many cases, they're actually good cards, and sometimes they are staples of their own archetypes. In this ranking, I've got cards like Heimdall, one of the finishers of the move archetype, although not the strongest archetype, and a difficult archetype to master. But then also cards like Miles Morales, who are just good. They generally feel good to play, but not really above average. 3.5. Now we're starting to get into the above average cards, and I'm just going to highlight one here, which is Cable, one of my favourite cards that I've got in this ranking. Cable feels above average and generally feels great to play, because when you play him, you steal a card from your opponent, and that can give you so much information and what we call snap equity, the ability to confidently snap and know that you have information that they don't have and that you have a great advantage. The classic example of this is when you're facing against Silver Surfer and you steal their Silver Surfer. You know that whatever they're doing, they don't have the linchpin of their deck. And so that's why Cable feels great. In the 4-star ranking, this is where I've got a lot of the tech cards like Enchantress and Cosmo. Generally just great cards. And I've also got cards in this rank which feel great to play in numerous decks. So Nightcrawler, really versatile, great movement card. Iron Lad, it's a combo card but can also have extremely powerful effects, albeit slightly unreliable. I will highlight more specific cards when we get to the 5 and 6-star ranks, but just a quick touch upon the 4.5-star rank. This is where I've got cards like Iron Man and Doom, some of the very best cards in the game, and these are actually some great cards that you can get early on. They still feel great, really high impact, really high power, and you can feel confident when you play these cards that you are going to win the game as a result of the power that these cards are laying down. Okay, let's move into the 5-star cards. I'm just going to highlight a couple from this particular rank, and then we'll look at every 6-star card, every card that I think is the best. But let's talk about the 5-star cards first. First of all, the trifecta of Thanos, High Evolutionary, and Arishem. These are some very special cards in Marvel Snap because they almost have their own sort of deck, their own archetype, their own extremely explosive, far-reaching ability that basically changes the way you play the game. Thanos shuffles the Infinity Stones into your deck. It means you're playing them and drawing through cards in a completely different way to normal decks, which is really good. It also increases your deck size. You've got High Evolutionary, who gives powers and abilities to those vanilla cards, those vanilla starter collection cards, and it's so great to have a few different ways that you can actually play these cards. Because of High Evolutionary, there's a few sub-archetypes. There's like an Affliction style deck with cards like Abomination, and you can even use stuff like Scorpion in there to afflict damage on your opponent's cards, and then you benefit from afflicting them, and cards like Cyclops do that as well. Or you can go the floating energy and gaining power route, and then cards like Cyclops actually dip into both. So there's loads of different styles of decks that you can do just with High Evolutionary. And then finally, Arishem shuffles 12 extra cards into your deck at the start of the game, and it is like playing this extremely fun different game modes. So these are some really awesome cards, and I rank them so highly because they are such a fun and different way to play the game. I also want to highlight two of the other cards that I consider to be almost as good as you can get, and that is Vision. Vision might sound like a boring card. He's just a 5/8, but you can move him every turn, and that ability to change where you're playing the power. So you might play Vision down, and then they've played, for example, Devil Dinosaur, and you now know that you pretty much don't have any hope in hell of winning that location, that you'd just planted 8 power. Vision gives you that flexibility to move it out. Not only that, but with the silky smooth style of deck, this is where in the club you mingle, you pringle, you stack cards in that location. You can benefit from doing that. Cards like Elsa Bloodstone, and Angela, they gain power or give power when you stack in the same location. You can scoop up that power and take it with you with Vision, which is really cool. And just the ability to actually change your mind on laying that power. That is such a powerful tool, and something that we're going to talk about shortly when we get to some of the best cards in the game too. But the final 5-star card I want to discuss is Magneto. He's a 6/12, and he moves all 3 and 4 cost cards that your opponent has to the location where you play Magneto. Magneto is great because not only does he have a really high power at 12, so he feels like a really strong whack of power and a looming threat, but also crucially he has this disruption element to him as well. So you may want to play him just for his power, you may want to play him just for the disruption, but generally speaking, Magneto is a really good finisher card that works in a lot of different styles of decks. You can actually trigger abilities of cards like Kingpin with Magneto and actually try and benefit from moving those cards, or Kraven. Or you just use it for pure disruption, so ruining their Ms. Marvel, their delicately placed Ms. Marvel. Or just for the power. You might play it on a location that they've already filled up, so you're not even moving any cards. So Magneto feels very versatile, and similar to Red Hulk as well, which is another card that I rate very highly and have at the 5-star spot. He just feels like a card which you can put in so many decks. So it's very versatile and a very reliable go-to high power card. But now for my favourite cards in the game, the cards that I think are the most powerful. These are my 6-star cards, and chiefly among them is Shang-Chi. He's a 4/3 and destroys all cards that have 10 or more power at your opponent's side of the location. He is the linchpin of Marvel Snap. He is the most played card in the game. He can absolutely win games, he certainly will win you games, and he keeps high power decks in check. If it wasn't for Shang-Chi, everyone would just play the highest power cards, and cards like Scar would run rampant because it would all be about rushing out the most power. But this guy means that there is a variety of different decks that can thrive in the metagame of Marvel Snap. But Shang-Chi, above all other cards, this is the card that I would pretty much put in every deck. I certainly have him in most decks that I run. Not all. I like a lot of fun, I like a lot of interest, so sometimes I do just purely omit him because there are more fun options. But if you want a reliable, strong card that absolutely will win you games, it has to be Shang-Chi. Moving on to a very new addition to the game, Nocturne. She's a 3/5, you can move her once, and when she moves, she changes the location of the location that she moves to. This means one of her best and most incredible tools is killing Limbo, cancelling the turn 7s. Magik is a card that we're going to be talking about in a minute as well. But yeah, turn 7s in the game, they can be incredibly powerful and incredibly impactful, and they can be absolutely vital to some strategies. Like Tribunal loves playing Magik and getting the turn 7 because it needs enough turns to actually get their combo out and get that consistency. Nocturne can stop that. Now, the fun thing about Nocturne is that she can screw you as well. I had a game recently where I moved Nocturne onto my opponent's Wong location and it changed it into Karmatage. It was an absolute nightmare. So she will screw you. However, the times that she won't screw you are certainly going to outweigh those times where she does screw you. And honestly, the times when she does screw you, they're fun and they're funny anyway. So that's why I love her. Also, it's the vision factor, being able to move that power. She's also cheap. She's 3 cost and she's 5 power. She's got a great load of power and you can move it, and there's lots of different ways to benefit through locations with Nocturne. So locations where you gain power, you can scoop that power with you and move it out. And things like Shuri's lab, get the double power, move her. Really, really strong. So yeah, Nocturne is incredibly fun, but also a very strong card, so I highly recommend her. Ultron is another one on my list, and actually he's been on my list for a while. He had a buff fairly recently. His drones used to only be 1 power, they're now 2, and it means if you're playing Ultron in any given location, you're actually basically adding 8 power to the other 2 locations if they're completely empty for you, which is certainly nothing to sniff at. Combine that with the very early series card of Patriot, that archetype in itself is so incredibly strong. But actually, Ultron just in general I think is a brilliant card because you do gain so much power just from playing him. Let's say you do have a couple of cards already in the other locations, you're still adding 4 power in each location, and then 8 where you play Ultron. I think he's absolutely incredible and much more versatile than you might first think. Let's talk about Hope Summers. She's a 3/4, and when you play a card at her location, you gain +1 energy the next turn. So she's a ramp card. Now, ramp cards in Marvel Snap are incredibly strong, and as such, they typically have a downside. So if you look at Electro, he's a 3/2, you gain +1 max energy for the rest of the game, but you can only play 1 card for the rest of the game with his ongoing ability. Hope doesn't have that same restriction. And yes, you don't get the power straight away because you do need to feed into Hope and you need to keep triggering it, but you can do so more than once. So you can do so multiple times a turn. I like playing her with Kitty Pryde, Nightcrawler, and Nocturne, other cards that can move out of her location, so you can keep fueling her, keep gaining that energy, and it really allows you to have stronger plays earlier. Hope Summers is absolutely phenomenal. Maybe less flashy than Hope Summers is Agent Coulson. He's a 3/4 and adds a 4 and 5 cost card to your hand, which might not sound like something that is actually that good. However, the ability to be able to curve out, do not underestimate it. And the other thing, do not underestimate being unpredictable. If your opponent doesn't know the cards that you've got, then they won't be able to play around specific scenarios. You could pull, I don't know, an Iron Man. They're not expecting you to have an Iron Man. You pull an Iron Man and you've got Onslaught Citadel down. Like, the rest of your deck might not be any ongoing whatsoever, and there's no indication that you would have Iron Man. And just in that one scenario, in that situation, you know you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to win that one location. You just need to worry about another. And you might have that. You might have played Agent Coulson on turn 3, so you're able to prepare for it. Not only is it unpredictable and does it curve out nicely, but it's also just fun. It makes games more interesting when you have something different and random happening every time. And I personally think it's really fun to strategize on the fly and try and get different scenarios to work. Another very new card in the game is Copycat. She's a 3/5, and when you draw her, you copy the ability of the bottom card of your opponent's deck. In fact, you don't copy it, you steal the ability. So, 3/5, she has a really good stat line just as it is, so just generally she's going to be good. And oftentimes you're going to be stealing abilities which the card that you're stealing the ability from might have weaker stats than that. So if you look at Korg as a 1/2 is a good card, but the stats aren't over and above anything that you'd expect. Whereas that Korg ability on a 3/5 Copycat it's now attached to a much stronger body. Slightly above average at least. Now, that might have been a bad example because playing Korg early is actually really valuable. However, you take my point, that was just a random example. Copycat will copy a random card. So, generally speaking, she's always going to feel really good. The crucial thing with Copycat, and why I think this makes her one of the best cards in the game, is because this ability triggers when you draw her. You don't even need to play the energy to get that information. Like we spoke about with Cable, you could steal their Silver Surfer, and you now know that they don't have the linchpin of their deck. Or, on the flip side, maybe you steal an incredibly powerful effect. One of my favourites to steal is Iron Man, because that is then a 3/10 power card that doubles the rest of the power at the location as well. So Copycat is an extremely fun card. She's actually more fun than I was expecting her to be as well because of the random effects that she causes. I'm a massive fan. I definitely recommend her. Let's talk about Nebula, one of the best one-cost cards in the game. She's a 1/1. And she has this element of control to her because if your opponent doesn't play at her location, she's going to gain +2 power. If you can get her out on the first turn of the game, she is one of the best early. She is one of the best early cards to play in the entire game. Not only is she just strong because of that ability to scale. If you do play her on turn 1, she's at least going to get to 1/3, which is above value in stats. However, it's the control element that is the particularly strong aspect to her. You reliably can know that they are going to have to play at that location in order to keep her power down. She can put on a lot of pressure, and if you're putting on that pressure and that control, you can then take advantage of that via things like Negasonic Teenage Warhead, Echo, or other cards that require you to know where your opponent is going to play. Maybe towards the end of the game it's maybe Eliath. She is a brilliant card, and she's a great plug and play card in that you can just stick her in any deck and she's generally going to do well. Penultimately, the second from last card I want to talk about is Magik. We spoke earlier about Nocturne, which is very much a bit of a Magik counter. Magik herself, she creates Limbo. She's a 3/2. She creates Limbo. She creates that turn 7 for you. This is utterly crucial in lots of decks, combo decks where you need to draw specific cards. She works great in there. But also, if you just need extra time, clog decks is one that comes to mind. You want to be able to clog them. The more time you have, the more time you have to clog them, and the more time that they have to spend into making weaker plays. So that feels really good. Or just any random deck which could do with extra time. I think about some decks that I've got which use Gwenpool, America Chavez, maybe Fastos, other buff style effects, where I'm pumping up my hand or pumping up my cards, and I want more time to be able to get the investment that I've put into growing my cards and empowering my cards. I want to make value on all of that investment and have more time and have more energy to play out more cards because it's beneficial to me. Now, of course, sometimes a turn 7 is going to benefit your opponent equally as it is to you, but those are just games where you do that few and far between. But Magik, she's one of my favourite cards in the game because she does give you this extra time, and I don't know, I just love playing Marvel Snap. She gives us extra time to play it. The last card I want to talk about is Mockingbird. She's a 6/10 and she costs 1 less for each card you have in play that didn't start in your deck. So that includes the Thanos Infinity Stones. It includes cards and tokens created by random locations like Savage Land or Monster Island. This all counts towards reducing Mockingbird, and I think I may have put in some footage earlier in this video where I was highlighting how bad Namor is, and it was like the perfect thing that happened because I played Namor. My opponent knows exactly how much power they need to play to beat that Namor, because they know if I play a card at the Namor location, I'm just investing into putting the power down. And they played Mockingbird because Mockingbird was so cheap and so powerful, and they were very easily able to win the location just because they had these other random stuff down. Mockingbird is incredible. You could actually stick Mockingbird in a random deck and she's always going to feel good, because chances are you may well get one of these token cards, whether it's a ninja, like a hand ninja from the location whose name I can't remember, or those last few locations I just mentioned. Maybe it's New York with the squirrels coming out. Maybe a goblin has been sent across to you, or a Widow's Kiss from White Widow has been sent across. All of these cards reduce Mockingbird's cost, so she feels really good to play out. Yes, she is weak to Shang-Chi because she is above that 10 power threshold, but generally speaking, if you see Mockingbird come up and you're able to claim it, or you're able to buy it with tokens, she's a fantastic card, one of my favourites. Thank you very much for watching. This was an arduous video for me to make, so please subscribe, please like, please comment. I'd appreciate all of that, because not only did this just take ages to compile, to actually do the rankings, make the graphics, and record this is like the second time I've recorded it because I had computer video based problems. Anyway, like I say, I'm going to update this 6 months down the line, so stay tuned for that one. I appreciate your watching. I'll see you next time. Cheers.